The city of Hartford is the capital of Connecticut and is also known as the insurance capital of the world. At one time, it was the wealthiest city in the United States based on per capita income. It's not surprising then that the city has been home to many iconic buildings. While a lot of these have been lost over the years, particularly during the city's demolition frenzy in the name of urban renewal in the mid-20th century, many structures survive that are examples of Hartford's great architecture, history, and continued development. Hi, this is History with me, Dan Sterner, and in this video, let's explore Hartford's 20 most iconic buildings. Before we start, I want to note that I have not included churches or other houses of worship on this list, but there are many great examples of ecclesiastical architecture in the city, from the elaborate steeple of the Center Congregational Church to the Gothic details of Christ Church Cathedral, the Asylum Hill Congregational Church, and the Church of the Good Shepherd with its neighboring parish house. Also, the Charter Oak Cultural Center, which was originally built as a synagogue, and the towering modernism of the Cathedral of St. Joseph. So let's begin with number 20, Union Station, built in 1889. It's been rail passengers' gateway to Hartford for over 135 years. This solid, Richardsonian Romanesque-style building was nearly lost when it was gutted by a fire in 1914, but it was quickly rebuilt and still dominates the western approach into downtown Hartford. Number 19 is the home of one of the city's iconic insurance companies. Just a little west of Union Station is the home office building of the Hartford, a grand classical revival building with a dome and a triangular front pediment supported by 6 Ionic columns. Built in 1921, the large building occupies a commanding position atop Asylum Hill, which was named for the Asylum for the Deaf and Dumb, now the American School for the Deaf, that stood here for a century before moving to West Hartford. The Hartford Insurance Company building is also where the great poet Wallace Stevens worked for over 30 years before his death in 1955. Number 18 is the most modest building on the list in terms of size, but it was home to a major figure in American history and literature, Harriet Beecher Stowe, the author of the anti-slavery novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, the book that helped to ignite national passions in the build-up to the Civil War. Stowe lived in the house from 1873 until her death in 1896, and it is now part of the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center, along with the neighboring Catherine Seymour Day House and Chamberlain Carriage House. Number 17 first opened in 1975 as the Hartford Civic Center, but it's been called the XL Center since 2007, a massive complex occupying a significant section of downtown Hartford between Trumbull and Ann Streets. It contains an arena and convention center, and once also included a mall that was later eliminated. Once the home of the Hartford Whalers, the arena has been the site of many sporting events and concerts over the years, but the most infamous moment in its history occurred on January 18, 1978, when the roof collapsed. Thankfully, it was the early morning hours and no one was injured. The renovated arena reopened in 1980. Number 16 on our list is one of Hartford's newest icons, Dunkin Park, a 6,121-seat baseball park in the downtown north area that's home to the Hartford Yard Goats. Opened as Dunkin' Donuts Park in 2017 after a year of controversial delays, it has quickly become a fan-favorite destination in the city. Just a bit north of the ballpark is number 15, the Keney Memorial Clock Tower. It was erected in 1898 in a small park along Main Street that was the site of the former grocery business of the brothers Henry and Walter Keney. The Gothic Revival structure, which is the only freestanding tower in the city, bears a plaque that states it was erected in honor of the Keney brothers' mother. This icon of Hartford was featured in innumerable postcards in the years after its construction. Number 14 Erected a decade after the nearby Hartford Insurance Building is another insurance company headquarters, the mammoth Aetna Building, a rambling colonial revival-style structure designed by James Gamble Rogers. Inspired by Hartford's old State House, it's topped by a tall cupola. The complex's huge bulk is evident to commuters passing by on Interstate 84. Number 13 is an architectural gem erected in 1876 that was designed by the renowned architect H. H. Richardson, an early example of his distinctive Richardsonian Romanesque style. It was built for the Cheney brothers, not to be confused with the Keney brothers, silk manufacturers of South Manchester, Connecticut. But it is best remembered today for its many years as the home of Hartford's Brown Thompson department store, and later for the Brown Thompson restaurant that became City Steam Brewery. It remains one of the most distinctive buildings in the heart of what was the city's retail center. Number 12 is another landmark of downtown Hartford's days as a shopping destination. This grand, classical revival-style building, designed by prominent architect Cass Gilbert, was the home of the city's landmark department store G. Fox & Company from 1919 until it closed in 1993. Now used by Capital Community College, the G. Fox building is a reminder of Hartford's retail heyday, and it still has the 1930s front marquee that once served as a platform for G. Fox's iconic Christmas displays. Number 11 is a monument to Hartford's theatrical and performance history, Bushnell Memorial Hall, now known as Mortensen Hall and part of the expanded Bushnell Center for the Performing Arts. It occupies a prominent corner adjacent to the state capitol. Built in 1930, it has a colonial revival exterior and an exuberant Art Deco ceiling inside. If you are enjoying this video and want more historical content, remember to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. Now, back to the countdown. Number 10 is the center of Hartford's city government, the Municipal Building, or City Hall, on Main Street. Built in 1915, this Beaux-Arts building is notable not only for the elaborate classical decoration of its exterior facade, but for the lavishly ornamented atrium inside, which is one of the city's most iconic interior spaces. Number 9 is a row of 3 connected structures, Northam Towers, built in 1883, which is flanked by the earlier Jarvis and Seabury Halls, built in 1878. Together they make up what's called the Long Walk at Trinity College. Occupying a prominent position on a summit known as Gallows Hill, their construction marked the arrival of the college here at its new campus location. Its original campus was downtown, but the college had to move when the new state capitol building was erected there. The Long Walk's high Victorian Gothic style, designed by leading English architect William Burgess, became so iconic that it influenced the developing collegiate Gothic mode that came to dominate so many universities in the ensuing years. Another Gothic building, designed by Hartford architect George Keller, is number 8, the Soldiers and Sailors Arch. Dedicated in 1886 to honor the service of Hartfordites in the Civil War, it was the first permanent memorial arch to be built in America. One of the city's most distinctive monuments, it has long been an icon of Hartford and was frequently featured in postcards that juxtaposed it with neighboring Bushnell Park and the Park River, that once flowed around the park and under the bridge that led to the arch. Number 7 on our list also started with a Gothic structure and later expanded to include buildings in the neoclassical and modern styles. The Wadsworth Atheneum Museum of Art opened in 1844 in a Gothic castle-like building designed by the noted architects Alexander Jackson Davis and Ithiel Town. Major additions to the Atheneum include the Colt Memorial of 1906, the Morgan Memorial of 1910 that was expanded a few years later, and the Avery Memorial of 1934. Continuing as an icon of Hartford today, the Wadsworth Atheneum is also recognized as the oldest public art museum in the nation. For number 6, we move forward to the modernist world of the mid-20th century international style. Designed by Max Abramovitz and completed in 1963, the Phoenix Insurance Building is the world's first two-sided building. Sometimes called the Boat Building, it occupies a prominent site downtown and is linked by elevated platforms to other landmarks of Hartford's big urban renewal projects. The buildings of Constitution Plaza, erected around the same time as the Phoenix Building, and the early 21st century Connecticut Science Center and Connecticut Convention Center complexes. These structures all occupy a prominent place adjacent to the Connecticut River and Interstate 91. Number 5 on our countdown is another iconic structure passed by thousands of commuters every day, the striking onion dome atop the Colt Armory. Of all Hartford industrialists, the most legendary is probably Samuel Colt, inventor of the Colt revolver, known as the gun that won the West. Colt was an early master of marketing and publicity, and the blue dome atop his 1855 armory, likely inspired by his business connections with Russia, where he was presented to Tsar Nicholas I, was intended to attract attention and to advertise his factory. After the original factory burned down in 1864, his widow, Elizabeth Jarvis Colt, quickly rebuilt it, and the Colt Armory has continued to be an icon of Hartford ever since. Number 4 is the skyscraper that for over a century has dominated the city's skyline. Taller buildings have since risen up in Hartford, but when the 24-story, 527-foot Travelers Tower was completed in 1919, it was the tallest building in New England and the 7th tallest in the world. Don Barber's iconic design continues to serve as one of the foremost symbols of the city. Number 3 is the oldest building on our list, the Old State House, built in 1796 to a design supplied by the famed architect Charles Bulfinch. A notable example of Federal-style architecture, the building links the city to its earlier history. In the early 20th century, it became a stylistic icon for the colonial revival movement, influencing the architecture of buildings like the Aetna Insurance Company headquarters and the Bushnell Memorial, both featured earlier on this list, and other buildings like Hartford's West Middle School and the Connecticut Building at the Eastern States Exposition Grounds in West Springfield, Massachusetts. Number 2 is the Connecticut State Capitol. Completed in 1878, it is brilliantly situated on a hill, once occupied by Trinity College, that overlooks Bushnell Park. Another great example of the high Victorian Gothic style that's so emblematic of Hartford's Gilded Age. It was designed by Richard M. Upjohn, son of the famed ecclesiastical architect Richard Upjohn. The Capitol building is unusual for being a Gothic structure that's topped by a dome. Now we come to number 1, but first I should note that there are many other buildings that could have been included on this list, from the grand facade of the old Hartford Times building, now part of UConn's Hartford campus, to the industrial history represented by the Fuller Brush Factory on the northern stretch of Main Street, or from the Art Deco style of the Webster Theater to the many grand homes of Scarborough Street and Prospect Avenue. Perhaps you have a favorite that you'd place in the top 20. Let me know in the comments. As a center of government, Hartford has many grand public buildings, and there are many landmarks to the city's insurance, manufacturing, and retail history. But for many tourists and lovers of literature, their main experience of a visit to Hartford is likely a tour of the Twain House, the iconic home of the author of Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, and many other classics, was built in 1874. Here, Mark Twain, whose real name was Samuel Langhorne Clemens, lived with his wife and 3 daughters. It was his home from 1874 until 1891, the longest period of time in which the writer and humorist lived in one place, in the city of which he once said, "Of all the beautiful towns it has been my fortune to see, this is the chief." Besides being the home of a quintessentially American author, this strikingly polychromatic house, designed by Edward Tuckerman Potter, is an internationally famous landmark of domestic architecture and probably Hartford and Connecticut's most widely known icon. I hope you enjoyed my list of Hartford's 20 most iconic buildings. Which buildings were your favorites? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.